Welcome to your daily dose of the ultimate sales machine. Amanda Holmes here, CEO of Chet Holmes International, and I have my quote here, chapter 13 of the new edition, The Legacy, How to Live a Rich and Full Life. This chapter is the encore my father never got to give and the missing piece to assisting you in living a rich and full life. So this final chapter, I wrote 100 versions. I literally have 100 documents on my computer of the millions of ways I wrote these just 10 pages. And over the last 4 years, how I wanted to say it, I think it's very important to notice the pig-headed discipline and determination it took to write this chapter. And then I'll wrap it up with something that I didn't put in the chapter that didn't make the final cut, but I think is a very important point that you will love for how to live a rich and full life. But first, for so many years, I was doing my research on how to write something that would really land for people. So when people would ask me, oh, you're writing the edition, what's this chapter you're writing? And I'd say, it's about service. And I'd watch their face and I'd see their face and be like, okay, whatever, who really cares about service? So then I said, okay, it's about meditation. And sometimes people would be like, oh, that's interesting, but not very often. Or they'd just look at me like, of course, everyone said that. And then I'd say, oh, it's about vibration. It's about energy. It's about love. And every time I would watch for the people's expressions on their face to see if they would lean in. It took 4 years of going through all these different possible quotes, topics, until I was reading through my father's old emails and I found this letter that he had written where he had generated more wealth in the last 6 months than the prior 8 years combined. And it was all because of this one thing. I remember the day that I found it and I shared that with somebody while sitting at a table in Las Vegas. And I was there for a keynote and everyone at the table leaned in and went, uh-huh. And I'm like, and I do think it's actually the encore he never got to give. And instantly, one of the people at the table started choking up, like crying, like it instantly set this emotional response within them. And in that moment, I realized that is how I explain the final chapter. And there's many different ways that I went about trying to explain that, how to live a rich and full life. And one of them that didn't make the book was my guru. I study under an Indian saint. Her formal name is Sarvalokama, Her Holiness, Shri 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 1008 Guruji Punamji. It's very long, but it has a very high honor. That's why it's so long. And I just call her Guruji. She's the founder of Divine Bliss International, which is a nonprofit. And I'll never forget this story. And I wrote it in many of the different versions, but it didn't make the final cut. It was about Alexander the Great. She told me about how Alexander the Great conquered so much of our world today. And he had ridden the seas to India. And he landed there, and as he conquered yet another kingdom, he went in front of the king and said, I've conquered your lands, now give me your crown. I'm king now. And the king said, you can have my crown, but you will never take away. I am always the king of this land. The crown doesn't hold my title, it's who I am and who I be. And this man was so shocked by the humbleness and yet the confidence of this king. He looked at him. It took him a moment to wrap his head around this. And he said, where do you get such wisdom from, king? And the king said, I have a guru that I study under. And Alexander the Great said, I'd like to meet your guru. So this king took Alexander the Great to his guru. And he was so amazed by the enlightened being that he studied under this guru for a while, actually, and learned a lot about life and fulfilling a true destiny and what the purpose is to really living here in the world. And then he set off, he really appreciated that time with the guru, and then he set off back to go home. And on that ride back home, he got sick and he knew he was about to die and he wouldn't make it home. And he told his subjects that when I die, what I'd like you to do is put my hands outside of my casket and walk me through my lands, all my lands. There's so much land that Alexander the Great conquered, and stop every so often and say to the masses, herein lies Alexander the Great. He conquered majority of land that no man had ever done, and yet even Alexander the Great leaves this world empty-handed. And the lesson there being that we can't take these things with us. All we can take is how we feel about ourselves and the lessons that we learn to assist us to be the best version of ourselves while we're here. I just freaking love that story. I think that is so flippin' cool. It didn't make the final version, Alexander the Great, but it's still a great story about life. So I hope that gives you something to think about until the next episode of what are you doing to sweeten every deal in your life so that when you leave empty-handed, you have something worth cherishing, something that could take you even more beyond what's in your bank account. What is that? What could it even be? So I challenge you. And that is today's daily dose of the Ultimate Sales Machine. Make sure to get your copy or copies at theultimatesalesmachine.com. There's a lot of special bonuses that you can't get going to Amazon, so make sure you check it out at ultimatesalesmachine.com.